Three, two, one, go. Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to our March panel for Asian Wander Women. We are talking today about leaving your 9 to 5 to travel the world. Our panel today consists of Emily, Dan, and Henry. We're going to have an hour to discuss together. Let's start a little bit with how you all found this event and why this event is happening. I'll tell you a little bit about Asian Wander Women first. Asian Wander Women is an online Facebook community group founded by Emily Fang, who is with us today, and Ivy Shu. Is that how you pronounce Ivy's last name? Perfect. It was created in 2020 during the pandemic to provide resources and inspire female Asians who are nomadic. And whether that means you're working a remote job, a location-independent digital entrepreneur.
Snack 不是 main meal.
I'm gonna mute someone here. Sorry.
Yeah, I think, hey, double check if you're muted, guys, just in case. I think we have some background noise. I think share. Yeah, thanks.
Perfect. Sorry about that. So yeah, whether you're working a remote job, a location-independent digital entrepreneur, an expat, teaching English in a foreign country, a frequent traveler in a home base, or someone who just desires the nomadic life, Asian Wander Women is for you. And we are now a over 1,500 plus organically grown community in various cities like Taipei, New York, San Francisco, Toronto, Singapore, and more. As you can see from our chat, people are joining from all over the world, which is really wonderful. So let's kick things off today with some intros. So I'm going to throw things over to Dan. If you'd like to introduce yourself and where you're located currently, that'd be wonderful.
Hello, everybody. Yes, I am Dan. I am Chinese American. I grew up in the suburbs around Philadelphia, and after college, I worked for a few years in big tech, both in San Francisco and New York City. And I left my job in August of 2022, and I have been traveling Asia ever since. And currently, I am based in Hong Kong.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dan. Emily, tell us a little bit about you and where you are.
Yeah, currently I'm location independent. I travel between Singapore, Taiwan, and San Francisco. I quit my job at Stripe last year to kind of do my own thing and like be a solopreneur and like build communities, though it's a lot harder than I thought it would be. But currently I'm in Singapore for an event, and then I'm just really excited to, be on this panel and kind of see everyone and share insights.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Henry, where are you right now?
Yeah, my name is Henry. I'm currently based in Singapore. I quit my job last year. And a bit about me. I was born in China. I grew up in the US, worked in big tech for a while, and then quit my job last year. And now I'm just doing YouTube and a bunch of side projects on the side.
Very cool. And I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Justine, and I am the host today. The way I kind of fit into all of this is, I would say I did not choose to leave my job last year, but my job left me with mass layoffs, and that's okay. But since then, I have been traveling and figuring out a new journey for myself, and it's been a really explorative experience. And so I'm happy to share my insights on my experience as well. So you don't always leave your job, but your job leaves you, and that's okay. So let's get things kicked off here with the question of, when did you decide to leave the 9 to 5 and why? You guys touched on it a little bit, but we can dive a little bit deeper into that. Henry, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So I guess for some background, I worked in big tech for about 10 years. And last year, I was in a director role at a pretty big startup, and I was under a lot of stress from the side, from above, and from beneath. I felt like I was being compressed. And then I just remember I was working from home. My dad saw me. He said, "You look very depressed and sad," because I'm just working basically from 9 to 9 every day. And then on a weekend, I was working on my YouTube stuff. And then he noticed, he thought I was playing video games. I told him, no, I'm actually working on my YouTube stuff. And he was like, "Oh, you look so happy. You seem to enjoy it so much that you forgot to eat lunch." That's how much I was enjoying doing my own thing. And then he asked me, maybe you should consider doing something you enjoy. And then I thought about that. I said, well, if I work at my 9 to 5 job, sure, I earn this amount of money, but is that amount of money worth the time, the stress, and the happiness versus working on something that doesn't make as much money, but something that I really enjoy doing to the point that it doesn't feel like a job. So at that point, that was probably August last year. I decided to make the jump. And before I made the full jump, I just did a quick calculation on how much money I actually needed every month to get by. And I realized that number is a lot smaller than I thought. And hence, it made sense for me to quit my job. So that's when I made that jump from the 9 to 5 to being an entrepreneur.
That's amazing. I think you bring up a really good point of it's kind of like a core value that you're kind of questioning, and something we're taught growing up, like to be ambitious means to strive for more money and get the promotion and work long hours and do good at your job and all that stuff. So it really rocks you to your core to consider what other lifestyle you might be able to pursue. And so I'm really glad you found a path that works for you. And to forget about eating is a big deal for us. You know, we love our food. So it means something for sure. Dan, will you tell us a little bit about what led you to leaving the 9 to 5 for yourself?
Yeah, so I had always like wanted to take a gap year and travel around Asia. And like regularly, like when I was still like working in the US, I enjoyed taking vacations to Asia and like traveling to Asia all the time. I think COVID is what made me realize that like we can't take traveling for granted. Like things can happen that like make it more difficult. So it was actually during the peak of COVID, like 2020, that I like decided like as soon as the pandemic recedes, I'm gonna quit my job and travel around Asia. So that ultimately took like kind of 2 years for places to like start to open up again. And then I finally like made the leap in August of 2022. And I think like it was initially like it was a little bit nerve-wracking, but I had observed many like coworkers and friends doing similar things, like kind of also like as a response to the pandemic. And so that at least like kind of was like a form of validation. It's like, oh, okay, like these other people I know who are like, have been really like career driven, ambitious, are taking time off to travel. Like I should do the same.
That's awesome. And I do think it's becoming more, what's the word, normal, I guess, and more people are taking the leap, right? More people are taking this opportunity to see what this lifestyle could be. And it is definitely scary and it's definitely difficult in a lot of ways, but I think it can be really worthwhile. But it takes time to build, right? To build the lifestyle you want. Emily, will you tell us about what led you here?
Yeah. So just to preface things, like I feel like I was in Singapore for the past like 2 years and a half, and I have a theory that like if you're in Singapore for over 2 years, you have like a pivotal moment where you're like, either I stay here and then you stay for like 7 years, or you just leave after 2 years. This is just like a trend I've kind of noticed amongst my friends. Like when they hit the two year, they're like, now what's next? And like, do I stay here? I think at a certain point, I was in a tech role where, I mean, it was great. Like the team was great, like comp was great, like the environment was great. It was just like the work itself that I hated doing. And similar to Henry, like I'd be working on like side projects, specifically like YouTube, like making kind of like chump change on the side, like working with like content partners. But eventually it like got bigger where I was like, oh, I was actually making like a decent amount of money like through partnerships. And I think that was like the realization that like, hey, like money can actually be made in so many different ways. And one of the things I always tell people when they're like, oh, I don't know, like I can't do anything beyond like the 9 to 5, or like I don't know what to do. Like if you look at anything in this room right now, like in your own room, it was marketed, it was bought, there was like a supply chain, it was sold. Like this water bottle was probably made for like $1 and now it's sold for like 30. So, and like the paint, like it's just, I think that was the realization. And I was like, shit, like I can explore other options. So I'm exploring, and that's how I'm here now.
Amazing. Amazing. And I think, yeah, that's also another thing that people are looking into now, looking for multiple income streams, right? Because even if you're at a 9 to 5, I think we're in an interesting time where a lot of layoffs are happening and a lot of people feel unsafe at work right now, daily logging in, and you're just like, I don't know if today is the day, right? I don't know if I'm going to have my job tomorrow. So setting yourself up with multiple income streams and pursuing things that you're passionate about is probably a good idea and something to explore, which is probably why you're here listening to this panel today. So we'll definitely dive into that more. I'd love to hear about the best thing that has happened since leaving the 9 to 5 for you, Emily.
Oof. I was like, this is so deep. The best thing. Oh man. Okay. So if you're into anagrams, okay. If you guys don't know what anagrams are, it's basically like personality tests, whatever. You can like, some people believe in it, some people don't, but my anagram is like 8 wing 7, which is like someone who likes control. Like I like to control all aspects of my life. I like to control my schedule, who I work with, who I surround myself with. I think the best thing that has come out of like this lifestyle is just the control of like, I can take my parents on a trip to like Nantou and Taipei. Like I can work remotely and like take them on a trip, or I can meet my friends who are in New York or in Taiwan. So I think like the choice of options really opened up for me. And I think it's not about the money. It's not about like having a certain type of like, bougie lifestyle. For me, it's more of like, hey, like I kind of want to take care of the people that have taken care of me, or like I want to be around the people that I want to be with. So I think that really was like the best part, where it was like, oh, like I can just surround myself with good vibes. Like that was like the best thing. Yeah.
Yay. That gave me the warm and fuzzies. That's so nice. That's so nice to reconnect with that. Yeah. Dan, what about you? What's been the best thing?
The exposure to different ideas and viewpoints, I would say. I deliberately pursued like a style of travel called slow travel, where you intentionally prioritize interacting with local people and the culture over like just sightseeing. And as a result of that, I've been able to make friends in all of the countries that I've traveled to, and kind of like learn about like their lives, like their stories growing up, like as well as like the history of the country itself. So I found that like super fascinating, like a lot more engaging than just like eating at like a bunch of restaurants and like seeing like tourist attractions. Although I did do that as well. Yeah, and then also another thing is like learning about like the business ecosystem in all the countries that I've traveled to, because in some of them I've looked for work, and like just contrasting like how those places like compare to the United States.
I really connect with what you were saying about like learning about new perspectives and slow travel. I think it is a result of probably age as well. Like I'm getting older, so I'm not able to do the quick hops and like see so much in such a short amount of time, but I'm also just not as interested. And so for myself as well, I've been traveling at a more slow pace, and also I've been couch surfing, which really forces me to live that local experience. And I've enjoyed it so much more, and it's offered me such a different perspective. Like, it sounds really cliche and cheesy, but I feel like a new woman. But I truly, truly feel like a new woman since living this lifestyle and not working the 9 to 5. So it's been really wonderful. How about you, Henry? What's been the best thing for you?
I think the best thing for me is having way more free time. After I quit, I noticed my stress level went from like a 10 or a 9 all the way down to like a 1. And then my happiness went from like a 3 to like an 8. So for example, I think when I quit my job, I realized I had so much free time, and that free time I can actually use to do the things that I always wanted to do. Like I remember my schedule was like, oh, okay, no more working. So what do? Wake up in the morning, go for a walk, read a book for like 2 hours at the park, learn to cook, right? I really wanted to get better at cooking. After that, go to a coffee shop, work for 3 hours most, because I'm more efficient when I'm working for a shorter amount of time. And then after that, I just play tennis. And that was my schedule for like a good 3 to 6 months. And I just felt happy, rejuvenated. And then to Emily's point, I can always look for new things to new things to monetize, right? Like you can monetize the things, your knowledge, right? You can sell your knowledge. You can also try to build something to solve a problem that you currently have. So been tinkering around with those projects on the side, but overall, like very happy, enjoy the autonomy and enjoy the ability to do hobbies that I haven't had the time to do before.
That's so great. I think you vouch for this lifestyle really well with those stats, with your happiness increasing so much and your stress decreasing so much. I think that's a real push for people to something to consider. I think we've all touched on it a little bit without talking about it too much, but I think it'll lead into the next question, which is what has been the hardest part about leaving the 9 to 5? And I think a big part of the hardest part, which I think a lot of people will want to hear about, is the financial aspect of it. So I think we should talk a little bit about that. Dan, do you want to start us off with the hardest thing, and if that hardest thing is related to finance for you as well?
Sure. I'll talk about the personal hardest thing for me, which is so far is not financial, thank God. The most difficult thing on like a personal level is just kind of like loneliness sometimes when you're traveling like in a new city. Like you can't be like hanging out with people all the time. Like sometimes you're in a new city, you like don't know that many people, and then you kind of just need to like figure out what to do like by yourself. So I find that like a little bit challenging, but over time, like as I spend more time in like a location, I get to know more and more people, like go to more and more events, and it gets a lot better.
Cool. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's not all like glamorous, like the like posting like Instagram stories at like parties at the club, like that's like some of the time, but like a lot of the time I'm also just like chilling in my like Airbnb by myself, like okay, cool. Yeah, so pivoting to the financial thing specifically, it's definitely extremely important to have like a sizable amount of savings, I would say, going into your like period of unemployment after like quitting your job. The ideal scenario would be like already having like some kind of like passive income stream that you have on the side, like that you can just continue to draw money from. But like in lieu of that, like it's better to just have like a really solid like amount of savings in your bank account. And I say that because like circumstances can change like really quickly. Like ever since like, for example, since I quit my job, like, the economy has kind of, not been that great. Like a lot of companies have been laying off, hiring has slowed like across the globe. So you might end up unemployed like for longer than you imagine. So it's just a lot safer to have like a lot of runway.
Great point. And I think the rule used to be that you should have like 3 months of savings, at all times. And I would argue for this lifestyle and in this economy, you probably want at least 6 months minimum, which I know can be really tough, but it's like the hard truth, I guess. This is just the advice being given, but definitely something to consider. Yeah, I have to say I haven't worked since July. July is when my company did mass layoffs, and so this was a reality check for me yesterday. I looked at my bank account, and all the spending I've been doing has been out of necessity, so I haven't been paying too much attention. But I looked yesterday, and I'm just not used to seeing my account deplete rather than having income coming in. And so it was my first time really being like, whoa, that's what those numbers look like right now. And it was kind of scary, but also realizing I don't need to worry too much, thankfully, as well. I'm in a financially good place with my savings. And how many times in your life will you get this opportunity to enjoy yourself, have time to do those activities you want to do, like Henry's talking about, have free time to do and pursue those things that you didn't have the time to do before, and just enjoy a little bit, right? Enjoy your life, be happy, be young. You're only young once, so do the things that make you happy and take the risks now while you can. So it's good. Emily, what has been the hardest thing for you?
Yeah, I would say initially it was like the like, oh my God, like can I actually do this? So the whole like mental battle between like, oh, should I just go like every day? I think for the past like 3 months, it was like, should I just continue looking for a 9 to 5? Like, should I just go back to like, start finding a more stable job. I think for me, it was more around like the stability, like not getting a monthly paycheck was like super scary and daunting because the projects I were working on were very like a little bit here, a little bit here. It's very sparse at times. And there was always like the gray area of knowing like when the next paycheck would come because you're just working on like multiple small projects. I think that was probably the hardest part. And then I think second is trying to figure out like after traveling and like nomading around, it gets really tiring and exhausting. And I always tell people that you're constantly building up like new, oh, your audio cut out. Okay. Let me know. But I think one of the hardest parts was like constantly building up like new friendships and relationships and also trying to navigate the new city that you were in. I think people don't talk about it. And I feel like it's such a kind of like a dumb privilege to have of like, oh, you know, you're tired, you're exhausted from travel. But I think remote working and like traveling at the same time, it takes a toll on people in general. So you're just like, I think constantly adapting to your new surroundings, and that really takes a toll on you. So my current problem right now is also thinking like, do I stop the whole nomad thing for a while and just like settle down in one place and then I travel out of that home base? Because I think as I'm nearing my 30s, like I crave more stability. Like I crave, like I want to have a dog and like better furniture. Like I don't want to be jumping from hotel to hotel. And I also want to solidify relationships with like people that I care about. So for me, it's like that current mind shift now. But it's really different. Like I think between men and women, like Henry and Dan, like I feel like you guys don't probably have this like thought of like rooting down. And I've had this discussion with like my male friends as well. Like they're more like, oh yeah, we still have like 5 more years of like trying to figure things out. Whereas like my woman, like my female friends and I were like, we're freezing our eggs. We're like, you know, running our businesses. We're also like, oh, it'd be nice to like root down. So the mind shift is like really interesting to navigate. Yeah. Oh, I think your audio cut out, Justine, if you're saying anything.
Yeah, we can't hear you, unfortunately.
Yeah, let me, if you want, do you want to make me,
Testing.
oh, no, it works.
Okay.
It works.
Cool.
Yeah.
This happened to me in the last panel as well. All of my audio disconnected in the middle of the meeting. I don't know why, and it came back. So great. I'm glad we're back. I was just saying, I'd be curious to hear what Henry and Dan have to say about what you just said about rooting down. I'm curious, Henry, have you ever thought about that?
Oh, yeah, I think for sure. Yeah, certainly that would be nice. I think traveling around for 1 year is good, but you know, for me, early 30s, I'm pretty much ready to settle down too. I think ideally back in California and then travel out of California. But yeah, to answer the question about the financial stuff or the hardest thing, yeah, for me, the 2 hardest things were one, how do am I giving up my career because I invested so much time and energy into that? And then 2 is the financial aspect. Do I have enough runway to kind of explore my own interest? So for the career one, I realized that even though I'm taking a break from, you know, product marketing, which was what I was doing, now I'm teaching product marketing and doing coaching. So it's still related. And I think that is a nice bridge or like, I guess, a nice continuation of my career. So I think I'm not giving that up in that sense, in that I still am continuing to build up my expertise in this domain. And then if I ever go back to a 9 to 5, it's easy for me to connect the dots and say, hey, look, I took a break from work, but I was still working in this domain. So that was the first one. The second one, the finances. I think the 2 things that helped me a lot were one, budgeting, like just really sitting down and really understanding how much money I needed every month. For me, that magic number was $1,500. I was fortunate enough in that I was, because of work from home, I was living at home. So I only had to pay my parents like $500 every month. And then everything additional, grocery, I cook for the family, and then car and gas, and then I eat out sometimes. That was $1,000. So I just did the math. I need $1,500 a month, and I looked at, you know, how much runway I had, and that was enough runway for me. And then the second thing was simplifying things. So I had a lot of, I would say, liabilities and assets. I had to like sell my liabilities. So basically, I got into rental real estate investing back in 2017, mostly out of state because California is too expensive. So I invested in properties in Ohio. But some of those properties were, even though they appreciated, they were also losing money. And I found that I was basically taking my paycheck and giving it to the property because there were issues with the house. So that was the second thing I did. I basically looked at my portfolio and I said, okay, let me just sell off a lot of these because I don't want to be burdened with managing property. And I think that was a good shift in mindset, like less is more, right? Having less stuff on your plate is actually better, even though on paper it looks like it's a good asset, but if you take into consideration time, energy, and attention, it's like not worth it. So I think those two things, having a good budget in place and then just liquidating all my liabilities to turn them into savings, I think helped me make that jump, along with the whole idea of like, oh, I'm not really stopping my career. I'm just doing the same thing, but in a different way.
I really like this topic of the gap on your resume. I think that's a huge thing that people consider. It's something I definitely considered when I was planning my last trip. I was in Europe for 4 months. I'd only planned for 3. Pushing it to 4 seemed out of this world crazy to me. I was like, oh my gosh, no one's going to want to hire me after this, 4 months off. But the reality is, I think any employer that aligns with your values will see that as time well spent. Depending, you can, if you're good at marketing yourself, which you can always spin it, any employer that's aligned with you will recognize that. And I also think at this day and age with the pandemic, it is not unheard of to have huge resume gaps. So it is not, no one's going to be questioning you as to why you have them during this period of time, especially. So I think that's something that you can leverage for sure. But I think that's something that myself and a lot of people I've spoken to are really afraid of about making this jump, because they just think that they're not desirable after taking a period of time off. But I don't think that's the case at all. Yeah. I actually, because of that whole audio mishap, I can't remember if everyone answered the question or not. Yeah? Okay, perfect. I think Henry is tying into the next question we want to get into, which is what are the foundational pieces you want to have in your toolkit before leaving the 9 to 5? And I can tell, Henry, you're like a very organized and pragmatic person. You've put a lot of thought into this, which is really wonderful. I think you've shared a lot of great tips. Dan, would you have anything to add? Some foundational toolkit pieces you need?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we all talked about this, like having like a bank account with solid amount of savings or like a passive income stream, like absolutely essential. It doesn't even have to be like a ton of money, like, like 6 months worth of savings in the US, like can be like 6 years worth of savings in like Indonesia. So like if you want to travel to like somewhere that's like really low cost of living, you can stretch your savings pretty far. Number 2, be adaptable, because circumstances change quite a lot. Like in the time that I've quit my job to travel, like a lot of COVID restrictions have been lifted, countries have been reopening, which is good. I've been able to add like a lot of new places to my itinerary that I did not originally plan. But at the same time, the global economy has not been that great, and a lot of companies have started stop hiring or like are laying off people. So job search wise, it's been a little bit more challenging. So just be adaptable, be like plugged into the news, be like aware of like everything that's like happening, like both like where you are and like where you in the places that you want to be. And yep, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Emily, do you have any tools that you've been holding back on us with? You share a lot in your social media.
I don't know if they're like tools, but I just like have a very like general framework of just like, because I like I like calculative risk, right? So for me, I'm always like, okay, like by month 6, if this doesn't happen, then I will do this. Because like for me, I still like to have a little bit of structure in my life, knowing that like I have a plan moving forward. So it's like, like when I quit my job, I was like, okay, I have 10K that like is saved up for like these specific needs for travel or whatever. And like I'm gonna use it to like build a business, or I'm gonna use it for travel. And if I run out of money and like I can't sustain this lifestyle, then I will go back to this. So like I always set up these like kind of little like frameworks for myself based on like timelines. But they're still quite flexible. I think it's the reason why I do this too is like a lot of people think that like, when you quit your job and you start traveling, like it's just all fun and games. But there's almost like this sense of like loss when you don't have a structure anymore. And like, when travel starts to get boring and you're just kind of, just like hanging out in cafes all day and being like, what do I do with my life? You have existential crises like every day. So that is like the hard thing that people don't talk about, right? Social media is like, oh yeah, I'm exploring Hanoi, I'm like doing all this stuff. But it's like, there are those pockets of time where you're like, holy shit, like what did I just do? And so I think for me, it's more of like at least having some kind of plan that makes you feel a little bit more stable, a little bit more put together when it comes to like making these big decisions. But I mean, some people also thrive in just like, I quit my job and just exploring the world and doing whatever. But for me, that's how I function. And that's how I process things in a more effective way. Yeah.
And I think I'm similar to you. My mom was looking at my calendar yesterday. She's like, you're busier than when you were working. What's going on? And I was like, yeah, it's because I like to structure my days to have purpose, I suppose. Like you feel a bit aimless, right, if you're not working. And so it's good to give yourself a little bit of structure, I think. And I think, Henry, you were doing the same. You were saying like for a good 6 months, you had that really core routine. And although it wasn't necessarily work all day, you were giving yourself time to explore those things that you wanted to sharpen your skills on, or just like give yourself time to play and enjoy. So even though play and entertainment may not seem like, I don't know, productive in some people's eyes, I think it's a really great way to let yourself grow and enjoy the time, right? Which is also important. Yeah. Let's do some advice. I'm sure you're all full of good advice right now in terms of this lifestyle, now that you've been experiencing it for a little while. Henry, do you have some advice you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think two pieces of advice. One is set goals. I think it's always helpful to have a North Star that you're striving for, but also enjoy the journey along the way. I know it's a little cliche, but what I mean by this is I think when it comes to goals, I think you should set a business goal, work on something that will hopefully turn out to be passive income for you, but make the work interesting and enjoyable for you. So maybe teach something that you already know, or build something to solve a pain point that you currently have. So for example, I'm working with a friend, we're thinking about, this is something that I would never think about if I had my 9-to-5 job. We were talking about dogs. We're saying, medium to large size dogs, they need to move around a lot, right? But people can't afford to take them out 5 to 6 times a day. So we thought, well, hamsters, they have the hamster wheel, but how come medium to large size dogs don't have something similar, like a treadmill that they can run on in the backyard? Because the backyard for most people are very small. So that's like an interesting problem to try to solve for that I'm working on with my friend. So I think that's one aspect, set a business goal that you want to accomplish. And then the second thing is set a personal goal that you want to accomplish, like something that you enjoy or are interested in learning. So for me, it's tennis. I was inspired by one of my friends. He's 32 now. He started playing tennis for the first time ever when he was 30, 2 years ago. And he's an accountant by trade. In 2 years, he became a futures pro. So now he's playing in tournaments around the world. So that's like a really fun activity to kind of aspire for. So for me, it's like setting those business and personal goals has really helped structure my life in terms of my schedule, my motivation, and how I'm tracking my progress. So I think that's been the most helpful for me.
Amazing. I am such a to-do list person, so goal setting is right on that list for me as well. There's something really quick I wanted to touch on what you said, which is having conversations that you wouldn't normally have if you were in the 9 to 5, which I think have been occurring for me as well. My friend and I have been exploring the topic of romance in terms of this lifestyle I'm living right now and how that fits into everything and dating. And she's like, I think when you are in quote unquote vacation mode, you are more open to receiving different types of experiences. And I think this translates also into the business world in terms of you end up having conversations and networking with folks that you wouldn't normally encounter in your everyday life if you were just doing your 9 to 5. And so when you open yourself up to these opportunities, you open yourself up to some very different perspectives, some very different conversations, whole new group of people that you would never interact with. And that's a really, really, really cool thing about living this lifestyle. So that's really cool. Dan, do you have some cool advice you'd like to share?
Yes. So yeah, all the advice Henry Justine gave was excellent. To add on top of it, one is like if you're not sure about whether you want to pursue this path or not, you can kind of try before you buy. Like some companies offer like paid or unpaid leaves for a few months. That's actually what I did. Like I was able to take a 3-month unpaid leave from my last job to kind of see if this was like something that I really wanted to commit to, and if at the end like I could have, I guess, like returned to my job. But at the end I just ended up immediately quitting because I realized this is so much better.
I like that. Try to buy. Try before you buy.
Yeah. So and then I think this has been touched on, but like definitely if you decide you want to quit your job, like try to have a rough plan, like of like countries you want to go to, like skills you want to develop, projects you want to work on. Otherwise it's really easy to just waste a lot of time like doing nothing. I personally kind of just bummed around like for a month or two, like on my couch at home, like doing nothing right after I quit. So highly recommend like sort of at least having a rough sketch of what you want to do. Third piece of advice is you don't necessarily have to travel on your sabbatical. These two things are kind of like intertwined, like, or at least like people commonly do them together, but having an stay-at-home sabbatical can also be extremely fulfilling. Like for the first few months after I quit my job, I was actually just in New York, where I lived. And during that time, I was able to like do a lot of things that I had like wanted to do for a while, but had not really had time to do. Like I was able to like take Mandarin classes. I worked on like a few side projects, and I was able to like, just spend a lot of time with like friends and family, like going to weddings, and all of that was still like really fulfilling, even though it was like just in New York where I had been like living at the time.
I was going to say, I think there's nothing wrong with bumming around for a little bit when you first transition. I think that time's also really valuable because you've probably never given yourself that amount of time to bum around. And so it's probably good to give yourself a bit of time to breathe and to like form that plan. So I think that's okay too. So, and it gives you the opportunity to kind of, like you said, you can be a tourist in your own city for once as well. And you can also just pursue those things that you didn't make time for before. Emily, I get the sense that maybe your advice might be goal oriented as well, but maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, not really. I think mine would be more around like the community aspect. Because I will say that a lot of people who go through this, it might be quite lonely and isolating, especially if you're like kind of like the only one in your current friend group doing it. It's interesting because like for me, like I feel like because of Asian Wonder Woman, I'm surrounded by people who are doing this, right? Like they're doing it all in their own way. And so to me, it's almost become like normalized where I'm like, oh yeah, like, they just quit their job and like, blah, blah. It's just in my head, I feel like it's something that like people just jump straight into. But I think if you're not around this, it's hard to have people to talk to, and it is very isolating. So I think my general advice is like find people who've done it before, who are currently doing it with you. There are just like certain topics and like insecurities and like things that you can have that other people might not get and understand why you're doing it. And sometimes like, for me, it's like when I'm around people who have you know, like the white picketed like fence and like the nice Teslas and like all those things, which are not bad, right? They're not bad. I'm like also like, kind of enamored by it too. I'm like, oh, like I want that life. But then I think about it, I'm like, wait, do I really want that life? Or is it just because I'm around these people who have that life? So it's also kind of being true to yourself and like making sure that you're like that you're not being pulled back into a lifestyle you didn't want in the first place. So yeah, it's more around like the people. Yeah. And I think actually the second thing too that is kind of interesting, it's because you're constantly meeting so many new people while you're traveling or going overseas. As we get older, it's harder to make good friends, like really good friends. Like I can't, like this is a topic that so many people talk to me about like when you get older, everyone just has like one or two really good friends. And the framework that I like to use, maybe you guys have seen it before, it's like to test if you want to continue a friendship with someone. It's like either you trust them with your dog, like your pet dog, like this person is wholesome, they're genuine, they would not kill your dog, like, you know, it's like a good person. And then the second thing is like, oh, if you would have 2 beers with them, like you enjoy the conversation, you think they're interesting, they're insightful. So if you have people that you know could take care of your dog, or you could have 2 beers with, that's like a good framework that I would consider it as you're getting older.
I love that. Simple but effective.
Simple. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing all of that. We are going to jump to a Q&A section here. I realized I didn't give an overview of what we were doing today, but we have wrapped up the panel discussion portion and we're going to give time for a Q&A right now. So for those of you who are with us in the room, if you'd like to jump into the chat and share any questions, you can do that. Or if the room is kind of quiet and you're feeling bold, feel free to unmute yourself and ask. But we have reserved the last bit of time here for some Q&A. And I'm just gonna make sure I can read the chat. I'm just gonna pull it up. Okay. Lamon, I think it's Lamon. I see a hand up.
Hello, it's Lehman.
Lehman, sorry, thank you, Lehman. Feel free to ask your question.
Yeah, so I have a question specifically for Dan, since I'm also a software engineer. What kind of like, did you like do jobs as you're also remote or are just on your own, like, are you just running on your own savings? Like, yeah, I guess that's just my question.
Yeah, me personally, I have not been working like at all since I've been traveling. I have been like interviewing for jobs. Like I've interviewed for quite a number of jobs in like Singapore, like some in like Hong Kong as well. Like I haven't been like personally working, although I've met like a decent number of people who have. I've come across like people who like live in Asia, they have like remote jobs in like the US, or like people who are like live in one part of Asia but like have a remote job in like another part of Asia. It's been eye-opening seeing like kind of how they operate. Like some of them like just stay up like really late hours. Like if they're working a US job, like they just work from like 10 p.m. to like 4 a.m. It seems quite difficult. I'm not sure if I would like agree to do that long term. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Melissa asked, do you ever have family pressure to just go back to a regular job? I can start. I don't. I have a cool mom. Thankfully, I have a cool mom who puts a lot of trust in me. The trust took time to build, of course, but I think I've kind of convinced myself and convinced her and those around me that, so during all of this pandemic, I went from being a flight attendant to working in tech to unemployed, and making the jump from flight attendant to tech was already like, whoa, those are two very different industries. And it helped build my self-confidence in terms of being able to say, I'm a very capable human being. And if I can make that jump, I could do anything I put my mind to. And so I have the skills to do the things that I want to do. Of course, I'm not going to try to be a doctor tomorrow, but you know, within reason. And so because of that, I think I've placed a lot of faith in myself and my mom as well. My family is feeling like, okay, Justine has a good head on her shoulders and she's just taking some time for herself, but ultimately she's going to figure it out and it's going to be okay. So I personally don't have pressure, so I'm really thankful for that. I don't know if anyone else is feeling any downward pressure from their parents.
No, yeah, same. No pressure from mom and dad. More pressure from them to settle down.
The relational aspect, yes. Emily, how about you? I feel like you've been reconnecting with your parents since you're in Taiwan.
Yeah. No pressure, but just definitely like comments like, are you sure you don't want to work for government? You know, like, are you like, to them, government is like the ultimate most stable job that you can have. My sister works in government, for context, and like my dad used to work for government too. So like they're very like, oh, why don't you just like work for government? It's pays okay and it's so stable. Like you'll never get fired, or like, you know, it's just like, I mean, you see DMV, right? Like in the US, it's terrible. But no, I think they similar to your cool parents, like your mom, Justine. Like my parents are pretty chill. Like they're very like, yes, just go as long as like you can survive on your own. It's fine. Yeah, not. I think the pressure is like internally, which is like a whole different thing. No, so no parental pressure, just like external pressure,
Yeah.
internal pressure.
Yes. And I think that's something else we can touch on really quick, which is the stability aspect. Like, of course, we all crave stability, but also at the same time, the way our parents' generation and the way they view stability is very different than the kind of stability we look for. And there's many different pathways to building the kind of life you want. And this one is not traditional for them, and so they're not used to it. So I could definitely see how family pressure could come down, but I also think that you shouldn't let it stop you from trying to pursue it.
One thing I just want to mention is something that was insightful that my dad said to me and to my sister before. He said, you have your whole life to work. So basically what he's saying is don't prioritize work, prioritize experience, and also ask yourself the question if you're ever gonna regret not doing this or whatever you're trying to do. So if the question is like, yes, if I don't do it, I will regret it later on, then do it. Yeah, and then just keep in mind, like you have your whole life to work. So money will come in. Like you can even work at like a fast food restaurant, you're gonna get money, right? But I think it's more about how you use your time in that specific stage in life and whether or not you will regret not doing it.
Absolutely. 100% couldn't agree more. I see a question from Nikki that says, do you notice any cultural differences in the workplace in Asia compared to the States?
Yeah, I can handle this one. Yeah, so I've been interviewing with quite like a number of like companies like across Asia, like Singapore, Hong Kong. Some are like the branches of like a US company, some are like a local company. Yes, like there's like a whole there's a lot of differences. In fact, Emily has like a whole YouTube video where she even talks about it. I would say in general, like working culture in the US is better for the most part, depending on like what an industry you work in. Like just US jobs, like they provide like better like benefits, like you don't have to work as much. You know, there's like a reason like so many people want to like move to the US to like to live and work, like the companies there and like the opportunities there, the amount of opportunities as well as like the amount of money you can make is definitely like still unparalleled. Yeah, with that being said, like Asian work culture is, yeah, there's some like noticeable differences, and you know, depending on like where you like go in like in Asia, like it'll be like for example, Singapore is like still a little bit closer to like US culture because it's a little bit more westernized, whereas like if for example if you were to work in China, it would like probably be like a complete 180. There's like a lot of nuances, like people work quite a lot, you're expected to like drink with your like coworkers and your boss like after work. People might not like be as direct about like saying certain things, but like they will still like try to get like the message across. I find that like part of the reason why I actually want to work in Asia is like I want to like get accustomed to like that business culture and like learn about like that way of thinking. And I think like if a person can really like grasp like both like Western and like Eastern like business culture, then like that person's like very well positioned to like succeed in like a 21st century economy.
I also met someone recently who said something that I agreed with. He said, in this lifetime, you're either going to work for or work with someone who speaks Chinese, speaks Mandarin. And I think that's so true. So being able to place yourself in a situation where you can, you know, understand culturally both sides of the world, that's really valuable right now. Yeah. Mars says, how do you keep yourself validated and motivated when your bets don't go according to plan? Bets meaning things you said you're going to invest more time in now that you're out of the 9 to 5 and thought you were going to do well in. So let me repeat that again. How do you keep yourself validated and motivated when your bets don't go according to plan?
I don't think I have a good answer to this, but I think again, it comes down to like having almost like a group of people. Like I have people that I go to when I feel like crap, right? Like I need like validation. I'm like, hey, this is happening to me. Like I need you to like make me feel better, or like I need you to like bounce ideas off of me. So I have like very like councilwomen or councilmen, right? That I like actively go out and like, this is happening because they've like been there, done that, right? Like to them, my problems are very minuscule and like small, and they know the right things to say and the right ways to like consult or like guide me. I think it's like having that. I think the second, which is super corny, but I kind of feel like they work. Like I wrote down this list of all the things that I've accomplished and all the things that I like believe in myself, kind of like affirmations, you know, like the whole thing of like reading out affirmations, like what you can do and like what you've set out to do. I think like rereading that helps me like validate like, oh, like this is the person that I am and that I aspire to be. So I can only think of those at the top of my head right now. But affirmations to me actually really work because that was just my past self telling me, kind of like rooting me on and being like, hey, you can do this. So that's what I would suggest.
And your like hits list is something that can be applied, that I only rarely thought about being applied to a workplace, but I think it's a great thing to apply to your personal life, like you were saying, because when you're at work, I created a hit list of, okay, I did this thing really well, this is what I accomplished, and you made a document so that when it came time for, you know, potential promotion, you're like, this is my evidence of all the work I've put in for this quarter. But I think you can apply it to your personal life and, you know, congratulate yourself on all the things that you're achieving, and to have a list of things that you can look back to reference and be like, hey, I did all this. Like, this was me. I did this and I accomplished this, is probably something really wonderful to start doing, like a brag document for yourself. So I love that. I really love that.
Yeah, there's actually something I do too. It's called futureme.org. I don't know if I told you about this before, but it's like you send an email to your future self and you can do it like in a month, 6 months, 5 years from now. So sometimes I'll still get emails from like 5 years ago. And I'm like, oh shit, like this is just validating like what I'm doing and whatnot. So it's kind of a nice reminder.
I love that. Kim asked, what are your side hustles to cover the expenses and where do you find them? Yeah, I guess we talked a lot about like passive income, and maybe we could just do like a quick list of things for people to just take some notes maybe. Henry, what are your sources of side hustles?
Well, two side hustles make money, the other two don't. So one is YouTube, just teaching on YouTube. I monetize it. I have 2 courses. I sell my resume. I sell an ebook. So people watch my video, get a lot of value from it. They go to my site and buy my course, my ebook, and my resume. So that's one side hustle. The other side hustle, I wouldn't count it as side hustles, but like a long-term investment. I still have some rental properties in Ohio that are not losing money. So those ones I did not sell. So those also generate passive income. And then the 2 that I'm working on, one is a video editing tool to make B-roll automated. That's more on the software side. And then on the hardware side is treadmill for dogs. And I treat those two as like fun projects that I don't necessarily try to make money from, but more to focus on adding value. And I think that's something about side hustles is like find something that you're knowledgeable about and solves a problem, and also try to focus on adding value first, because once you add value, there are going to be ways to monetize it.
I can't wait to see what happens with dog treadmills. I'm not gonna lie. Dan, do you have a list of your side hustles at the moment that are helping you cover expenses?
Yes, as of right now, I have 0 revenue generating side hustles, I am proud to say. I have mostly just been going off of my savings. Potentially in the future, one thing I was looking at was engineering advising, like potentially like consulting for like tech startups in Asia that like that want to like kind of expand their engineering operations, like grow their engineering team, but like they don't really know how. I've already been like approached by like a number of companies that like are interested in this type of role. So that could be something I do in the future. But yep, as of right now, I am not making any money.
I'm in the same boat as you. I feel no guilt about it. I'm glad you're enjoying life too. So I get it. Emily, your side hustles.
Yeah, I feel like, so for me, actually, like the biggest source of income right now is a consulting thing. So I work as like consultant slash contractor to a startup in New York. It's like 20 hours per week, and it's very flexible. So that's one project. And then I think like the other things, which I'm kind of scaling down on because it's been taking a lot of my time, is around like content partnerships, like small scale, like, oh, create a video here, or like do an ad insert, things like that. So I'm trying to be more strategic and like working for like more like tech companies. They pay better, and also batching content. So it's not just like one video, it's like 10 videos, like an ongoing partnership. And then just actually, I think like, but amongst us 31 participants, like I actually feel like the future, if you are trying to do anything, I think create a newsletter. Like right now I am like strategically building up my newsletter subs, because eventually you're owning your audience. You can monetize by doing like ad inserts. I have a couple friends who have like 1,000 subscribers right now, and companies are paying for like ad space even at 1,000 subs, and like they can make like 400, 500 just for like that, ad placement. So again, like I feel like all of us have something very interesting to offer. So if you have a niche audience and you have a subscriber list and you know the demographics, that is a very easy way to make money. And shameless plug, I'm actually going to share my newsletter. It's Option Asia. Yeah, it's Option Asia, which I think basically it's just opportunities for you to find jobs in Asia. But I think if anyone's interested in like writing and growing an audience, you can definitely do it. Like there's a lot of people who are doing it right now. And I think this is just the beginning of this like iceberg, because people want to own their audiences. Like platforms like YouTube, TikTok, you don't know their emails. Like you don't have a direct way of like reaching to them. So yeah, Justine, I feel like you have potential too. Like you should talk about like, yeah, anyways, we can talk about it later.
I will mention it really quickly. We are at time, but we've discussed as a panel, we have like a few extra minutes to hang around it. There are like 2 more questions in the Q&A that we can touch on really quick. I'll touch on really quick what I'm thinking about monetizing, which is I do a podcast right now, and the podcast is purely, think of it just like as a long form voice note to share with my friends and family about my travels. And so it's very, very casual at the moment, but I do think it's a thing that I'm really enjoying doing. And so it's something that I'm thinking about, how can I monetize this and change this into something I can pursue more formally. And so that's another option. If anyone likes podcasts or is interested in podcasting, that's another option for you as well. I want to answer this next question because we had a couple people like it as well. Is it feasible for this lifestyle to work if you are married or in a committed relationship where your partner is unable to leave the 9 to 5? I don't know if any of you are partnered up at the moment. Didn't get into your personal lives before we chatted, sorry, but if anyone has any thoughts on this.
Oh, or Dan, were you gonna say something?
I'm just saying I'm not like partnered at the moment. I'm trying to think if like I have met people like along the way that are drawing a lot
Yeah.
of points though.
I think, oh, also I'm just sharing Justine's Instagram. You can find her travel stuff. Yeah, you should listen to her podcast. I'm doing a plug for you. um, I think it is feasible. It's just more of like two people need to make it work and happen. You guys need to come to like a certain type of agreement in that partnership. But I've noticed that most couples are working remote jobs or they're entrepreneurs. Like that's the most common like couple persona I've noticed. Or one is like not working at all and the other one's working remotely. And it's kind of like give and take. Like it's not that one person will always support the other person financially, but they make their sacrifices to live this lifestyle. And it comes in different ways. It's almost like I know one family, they moved from Florida to Taiwan because she wanted to be closer to family and they uprooted their entire family there. I know another couple, they just like went in a camper van across the US and like worked remotely, but they were also engineers. I think it's feasible. It's just like depending on your partner's like risk tolerance and like if your goals are compatible and aligned.
Mm-hmm. And when we say 9 to 5, I also think it's obviously more feasible if your partner is a 9 to 5 remote worker, right?
Yes.
That's the thing. You can still be 9 to 5, but if you're a remote worker and you have that flexibility, then it makes it a lot simpler, of course. So yeah. It's a tough one though, I guess.
Unless you go without your partner for a couple.
Okay, that's a whole other topic. There are partners who live separately, who sleep in different bedrooms.
LDR.
It depends on how you want to make your relationship work, right? Everyone's different.
Yeah.
I met one couple. I met one couple in Singapore that they were married and they had both moved to Singapore together from New York. What happened was the girl got a new job. Like she transferred to the Singaporean branch of her company's like the Singaporean office of her company, and then the guy like kind of following suit, like basically just got a remote, like a fully remote job that was like based in New York, but he was just they let him work remote from Singapore. So like in that case, like I guess like technically neither of them like actually like left the 9 to 5, but they were both like able to like move together.
Yeah. So many possibilities. We have one more from Val. How has your budgeting skills improved since taking on this lifestyle? Have you changed the way you shop? Example, buying in bulk, etc.
I could start with that. So yeah, I've been in like Asia, like a variety of like places in Asia. And so I would say like for like a few countries that I went to, like the cost of living is like actually extremely low. Like for example, like Taiwan, Vietnam, the cost of living is like extremely low. So like in those places, you actually don't really like need to think too much about budgeting besides like your like accommodation. And that's like, to be honest, is like really nice. I at like slightly like higher cost of living places, for example, like Singapore and Hong Kong, you can save a lot of money by like eating or like, you know, living more locally, so to speak. In a lot of these places, it's like, you know, if you're willing and like able to eat at like local restaurants, like hawker centers, that kind of stuff, it's actually everything is like very cheap. It's like designed to be affordable. Whereas like if you like only like can eat at like Western restaurants, then like there's going to be like a markup for that. So yeah, TLDR, the advice is like learn to live like a local.
Live like a local. And yeah, this is the second time you mentioned it, but I think it's really important to realize that the dollar and the budget that you have can really expand depending on where you live, right? So you have options. I'm going to just quickly ask if anyone else wants to touch on this. If not, then we are definitely over our time. But if anyone wants to add any last minute advice on budgeting.
I don't think it's really advice, but I think personally, I just feel like if you want to make it work, like you can. And like using an example, when I went to Brooklyn, I did a sublease. Like me and my friend basically like shared a living room and we had like a inflatable like mattress, right? And like we were able to live in Brooklyn because of that. normally you'd pay like a couple thousand just to even live in it. So depending on what you're comfortable with, what you're willing to like tolerate, you can always kind of make it work. Like you don't always need to be living in like luxury like hotels or like rooms and things like that. So it's just more around like what you can tolerate and take. I think, and also like Dan mentioned, like using geographical arbitrage to like live, to make money, like make US dollars, but live in a lower cost of living country. Yeah, I personally think like Taiwan's a great place to do that. Like I was just there. Housing is still quite expensive, but you don't need to live in the heart of Taipei. You can live in like New Taipei, where all the millennials are moving to. So there are ways to make it work. It's just more of like, what are you willing to tolerate? Yeah.
Absolutely.
One piece of advice on my side, I think this applies more to more expensive countries like the US or Singapore. I think learn to cook. I think cooking's super underrated. Yeah, for example, in the US, when I quit my job, I started making acai bowls, learned to cook beef noodle soup, and a bunch of other Chinese dishes. But like normally at a restaurant, it'd be like 20, $25. I can just cook it for like $3 or $4 max. So I think, yeah, learning to cook is important.
Henry, in case you missed it, Emily is totally putting you up for sale as a single gentleman right now, as you're discussing. We love a man who
entered the
cooks.
auction phase of the
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording here. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. We will stick around for like 2 more minutes, let's say, if you have any lingering questions, you want to hop on and chat with us. But thank you so much for joining us today, and we will do more upcoming events with Asian Wander Women. We have monthly events happening, so stay tuned for the next one, and we hope to see you there. Thank you so much.